Hey everybody. As you can see, looking at my desk where the mid-tower deluxe sets, and things don't look quite right. For those who watch my videos pretty commonly, you'll notice that I normally have two displays at my desk. But the problem is tonight, my Westinghouse L2046NV Monitor has gotten so bad off to where I decided to just go ahead and pull the plug on it and get ready to work on it. Basically, the monitor is getting to where when you try to cold start it, it takes forever to start. And it's getting to the point where it's not even being recognized right by the computer. Used to be the computer would recognize it as a Westinghouse L2046NV monitor, but now it's recognized it as a Acer 17-inch monitor. So now it's only applying a 1280 by 1024 maximum data resolution to the monitor, when the actual monitor is designed for, I think, 1440 by 1280. I think that's the resolution. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyways, here's that monitor. So let's go ahead and start disassembling to see what the problem is with this monitor. Before we begin, let's go ahead and have a look at the specs on this thing. I got this monitor back in December of 2007 for Christmas. It was manufactured, let's see, the date code is made August 23rd, 2007. So as the monitor is being used for like 5 years, nearly 5 years, so I can't complain too awful much. It started doing this about a month ago, started acting up about a month ago. But now it's getting to the point where it's so bad off I need to just go ahead and fix it. And the problem with this, I believe, is bad capacitors. This ain't the first time I've had to fix a monitor because of this problem. I've actually had to recap two ViewSonic VA1930WM monitors, the flat panel monitors, because they had bad capacitors on the power supply board. And this one, I think, may have capacitors on either the logic board, the power supply board, or possibly both. Hopefully not both, but let's go ahead and see. And the funny thing is, I don't have any instructions on hand on how to tear this thing apart. I haven't really looked, but I've actually taken apart quite a few monitors before, so I kind of have a general idea how they go together. Anyways, on this one, this black plastic piece snaps off, and you have access to 4 screws to remove the stand. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, I got the stand taken off. Next thing you do is remove 3 screws. One here, and one right here. These two are bigger screws with a washer in them. This is a small little screw. Now I should be able to go ahead and snap this off. Well, the good thing is about this monitor is it's very easy to get into so far. I mean, when compared to the ViewSonic VA1930WM I normally have worked on in the past. All you do is, after taking those screws out, all you need is one flathead screwdriver to pop the back cover off. And let me go and just warn you guys about something. If you ever go to repair your monitor, be sure to leave it unplugged for at least a few hours or so. As you see, there's a warning here. It says high voltage caution. Risk of electric shock. Disconnect the electric power before servicing. Don't press here. So anyways, just like I say, be careful when you're working on these things, because they have a high voltage CCFL backlight in the display itself, and it requires a high voltage DC supply to run it. So it's kind of like a digital camera in a way, if you want to call it that. It takes in a lower voltage and steps it up. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and take these 3 screws. Well, there's actually 4 total. One here, one here, one here, and one over here. Take those off, and we should have access to the power supply and logic boards. You also want to go ahead and disconnect these cables here. These cables here go to the CCFL. Okay, also you'll need to take loose the 4 little screws that go into the VJ and DVI ports. and screws behind the power receptacle over here. You take those out. And actually, you don't have to disconnect these ribbon cables unless you need to take out the logic board. But you have a look here, just as I thought. Bad capacitors and their capsons. So we have 6 capsons, well 5 of them bulging, 1 not. I'm going to replace them all anyway. This cap over here is a GL. It's not bulging. It looks okay. But I'm definitely going to replace all the capsons in this power supply board. And of course, also be careful because you also want to check this high voltage capacitor here to make sure it's discharged. And have a look here. Look at the brand on this power supply. It's a Delta. Now normally when it comes to Delta power supplies, you would expect quality from them. Normally, at least when the Delta power supplies in computers, you never have to worry about them failing because they're usually built very well. I mean, sometimes they'll use some shoddy capacitor brands. Some not so good capacitor brands, such as, let's see, L-Tech, or I think it's what it's called, L-Tech, and a few others. And I have seen them use capsons before, but this is the first one I've seen that actually had bad capson capacitors. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to recap this power supply board, and that should bring this monitor back to the state that it used to be in before it failed. There's no telling how long these capacitors have been bulging. They're starting to leak a little bit too. Let's have a closer look. They're actually starting to leak a little bit. So yeah, I'll have to make a trip to Radio Shack tomorrow and get some capacitors. Okay, I just got finished installing the replacement capacitors. These blue capacitors came from Radio Shack and are not exactly the same dimensions as the old ones. But especially with these two, they were a pretty tight fit. Had to cock this one to the side a little bit to make it fit. Anyways, got the caps reinstalled, so I'll go ahead and put this thing back together and see if it works. Okay, this video clip has been recorded a week after the previous clips of repairing this monitor. And you might notice that the camera's audio sounds better because I've actually done some repairs to my DXG567NV camcorder. Anyways, this monitor works for the most part just fine. However, I did have a little bit of an issue with it. It was an issue that I was having before the repair. If you remember, in the earlier portion of this video, I mentioned how this monitor was not being properly detected by the plug and play. Instead of being detected as a Westinghouse L2046NV flat panel 20-inch display, it was being detected as an Acer AL17 something. I can't remember the whole model. How it was being recognized as a 17-inch display. So Windows is only applying a native resolution of 1280 by 1024, which is not this monitor's native resolution. And the thing about Windows 7 is it tries its best to optimize best use of the display. And when you're using two monitors, it tries to make everything look exactly the same size on both displays. My Dell 19-inch display is actually running a resolution of 1280 by 1024, which is actually the monitor's native resolution. Yet everything looks crystal clear in it and looks exactly the same size as everything on my 20-inch display. For example, I can move the mouse cursor between the two and they look exactly the same size. But when you're running this monitor at 1280 by 1024, things look very fuzzy. And I tried different DVI cables, could not seem to figure this out. It just kept being recognized as an Acer monitor. Tried some different pieces of software with no luck at all. So eventually I decided to dig out an old VGA cable I had laying around and plug that up. And when plugged up with VGA, it's properly recognized as a Westinghouse L2046NV. And it's running the native resolution of 1400 by 1050. Which is what this monitor is designed for. So more of the story is, when you start seeing issues with your monitor, don't do what I did. This monitor actually was exhibiting this problem for like a month. You gotta keep putting it off, putting it off, and putting it off, and putting it off. I mean, I was real busy. I had many computers to fix, and I had a bunch of college work to do. So the monitor wasn't as big of an issue to me because the monitor would start eventually. It would take a little while in the mornings because it didn't like cold starts. However, it would start. And once it was warmed up, it was working just fine. So don't do what I did. When the monitor starts acting up, go ahead and replace those capacitors because in my case, the faulty capacitors were delivering a very sorry quality of power to the logic board, and I believe that damaged part of the DVI logic on this board. However, the VGA works fine. So anyways, thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask.